Thank you for joining us today. Scott, Salkin, and I are going to discuss a topic that is really trending and is top of mind for many executives, which is leveraging channel partners to gain more recurring revenue. So we're honored to have Scott Salkin leading this discussion. Let me tell you a little bit about Scott. Scott is the CEO and founder of Allbound, and Allbound's mission is to help businesses accelerate recurring revenue through channel partners. In 2016, Allbound also launched Collaborate, the industry's first conference on partner sales acceleration. Over the years, Scott has spent his entire career in various leadership roles in high-tech sales and marketing, and he spent much of that time helping companies build partner programs to accelerate and grow revenue while also lowering customer acquisition costs. And he's been listed as one of Arizona's top 35 entrepreneurs under 35, the Phoenix Business Journal's 40 under 40, and has been honored as Arizona's Technology CEO of the Year and the Business Marketing Association Marketer of the Year. Wow, I am honored to be here with you, Scott. I feel like the schmuck here.
Well, thank you. No, that's an awesome introduction. I appreciate you mentioned all that. So thank you. I'm excited to be here with you too, Sally. So thank you guys all for being here. Thank you for the great introduction. This is a topic near and dear to my heart, as you can kind of tell from what I've done throughout my career, and that's partnerships. And really looking at partnerships from a lot of different perspectives for companies these days and how they help companies grow. And I think that has to do not just with resellers and referral partners and affiliate partners and just the ones you kind of typically think about to help you grow revenue, but also companies these days who have technology partners and distribution partners and all different types of partnerships to help grow their business, both from growing revenue and growing sales. But you'll see we'll dive into a lot today how partners help you grow recurring revenue and help you with customer success, and point you to some great resources to help do that. So why are we talking about this? I mean, we get the question a lot about like partnerships. What do they really need in the world of business? And I kind of try and bring up this statistic a lot. And if you really look at this purely from a number standpoint, it's pretty amazing. There are over 100 million companies, businesses around the world that rely on reseller ecosystems to go to market. In B2B, that is 75% of all transactions worldwide. So you think about those numbers for a second, and you think about, okay, companies these days who are not building or executing a partner program, what are they missing out on, and why aren't they doing it? And it's just a matter of looking at it sometimes and thinking, okay, these partner programs are only for the big guys, the Goliaths. How do they affiliate back to, SMBs and SaaS startups and the new recurring revenue model? And you see that even, the guy who really created the recurring revenue model, Mark Benioff, he said himself at the TechCrunch article just a couple of years ago, businesses in any industry, any market can only grow so far with direct sales alone. So we're going to dive a little more into that and talk about why that's true. And one of the first things I like to kind of bring up is this example of Apple, because I always tell people, hey, listen, sit down and look around the room that you're in right now. And if you do that, I challenge you to find one thing that you bought directly from the manufacturer. And so typically the answer I get is, oh, well, look at the thing I'm sitting in front of, my Apple laptop. And I'll say, yeah, okay, that can possibly be true. But let's actually think about Apple from a different perspective. Because when you really look at them and you look at Apple and what they do, you think about, Apple is actually a distribution partner and a reseller for Intel and their core chips that sit inside the device. Toshiba, whose hard drives are running within the device. And if you look about how they go to market, you don't just find Apple laptops and hardware anymore just at the Apple store. You find them at Best Buy if you're a consumer. And if you're a business looking to buy them in bulk, you'll often go to a company like Insight or CDW or some of these big, direct to market partners that will actually sell. But then there's also Apple's partnerships with companies like Nike, who we just saw this last year develop a specific version, a specialized version of the Apple Watch that they're going to market with. And so these technology partners, but also distribution partners. You can walk into a Nike store these days and find a Nike and Apple branded watch. So Nike and Apple and all these companies that you kind of think about, yeah, well, they're direct. They have this direct model. When you really sit down and look at it, Nike and Apple and a lot of other companies rely on this B2B ecosystem or this reseller ecosystem. And so what are the reasons, and kind of when we dig into this and look a little further from an executive level, what are some of the big reasons that companies go and build these indirect sales channels? And one of the first, the first three that I would talk about are some that I learned from a guy named John Hunter, who is the now running worldwide sales for BMC Software. And he kind of talked to me about, here are the three things that from a high level, from a sales perspective and from a CEO perspective, that I really like to look at and teach about when it comes to running a business: speed, efficiency, and agility. And when he said these three things, it just kind of, I kind of had a whoa moment, like, oh, wow, these really, are the three things that even when I think about running a SaaS company that are critical for us. Speed in terms of accelerating the sales cycle. You can even think of speed in terms of, getting customers to realize value as quickly as they can with your product. Efficiency, so lowering customer acquisition costs and really running a lean business and be able to grow while lowering costs. And then agility, so your ability to respond to market changes. Companies are all the time looking at what's happening in the market in terms of competitors, in terms of customers' buying cycles, in terms of how they need to position themselves in the market. And when you look at, kind of one of the ways that have the most impact on growing a business, you can really say that, these three areas are kind of top of mind for all executives. So I'm going to bring back Sally here for a second and kind of ask her a little bit about these characteristics. And really, Sally, how do you see some of the business leaders you talk to and you work with from the perspective of the Bridge Group? How are you looking at these?
Yeah, Scott, this is my world, and I live in this every day, being so focused on inside sales and sales development with the Bridge Group. These are the reasons why inside sales and sales development have taken off over the last 10 years. As technology evolves, business dynamics change, and you have to be able to respond to the market quickly. You need to get there before your competitors. So the need for speed is huge, especially in the tech world and what we live with. Pretty much every company we talk to wants to get out in front of the competition, and they want to do it lowering their costs to acquire companies, especially in the cloud businesses and the SaaS world. Lowering that cost to acquire companies is really critical to them and to their long-term success. And again, inside sales along with developing an effective channel are really top methods for companies to utilize to accomplish these three areas that you were just talking about.
Yeah, all great points, and I challenge everyone on this call to kind of think about, how does your product, and even how does your solution, not just from a channel perspective, but how does what you sell and what you do to run your company, how are you impacting through what you provide to your customers, and how are you impacting speed, efficiency, and agility? When we go in and we are actually talking to prospects and customers, these are the three things that we really focus on a high level to help them do. It's not just to go and build a channel, it's to build a channel for a purpose. So, listen, the other thing that we want to talk about today is how partners help customers. Because at the end of the day, today's day and age in terms of cloud and subscription economy, it's all about delivering value and helping customers. And for a long time, as you'll see as we go through this, partners and channel partners have been thought of as, a resource to go help drive sales. These days, it's all about having partners to help improve customers' value and make happy customers as well. So let's go back real fast to this Apple example, because I'm going to kind of bring it full circle here. We talked about how Apple gets products to market, but if you dig a little bit further on the Apple website, these two screens I think are really critical. When Apple talks about putting their product into the best hands, they don't talk about those geniuses in the Genius Bar in their stores. They talk about the consultants network, the independent resellers, the local service providers who actually are there to provide services and solutions based around Apple products. You see it right there on the screen. So when they talk about, okay, we want you to get the best services and the best results possible from our software, when you want to get the best possible results and most value from our software and hardware together, you're going to go and work with some of our resellers, consultants who do this. So that's where, hey, A, it's about, selling the product, but B, it's about getting the best results possible by working with these resellers and service providers. So again, nowhere is that more important than the cloud and subscription economy. And not to beat the Apple drum too much, but we see what they're doing. They even released a couple of new devices today with a red iPhone, and I think they came out with an updated iPad. Hardware is critical for them. Sure, their iOS is critical for them. But when you think about Apple and where they generate tons of revenue, it's on the subscription economy with some of the other tools they built. That was Steve Jobs' vision, to build that recurring revenue stream with tools like iTunes and now the Apple TV and some of the other resources out there. So nowhere is this more important, again, in the cloud subscription economy than where recurring revenue is gold. And that is where partners are playing a bigger and bigger role these days. So, Sally, what are some of the bigger differences you see in companies selling, subscription-based cloud solutions these days versus kind of what the more traditional, even legacy sales models are?
Yeah, I think back on just a few years ago when I started my career in tech at Oracle, and, it was the traditional, legacy sales, traditional enterprise sales model where we sold the software, we may have sold a little bit of services or training and a support contract, and as soon as that contract was, done, we were off and running on to the next one, right? And they were now the role of our renewals people to, call them 90 days before the contract expired, and we may not have had any real communication with them in between the day the contract was signed and, and 90 days before their support contract would end. And what we've seen today is the focus that the successful cloud companies have on really the customer adoption, the customer engagement, and ensuring that customers are using the product right from day one. This has really become the holy grail of cloud and SaaS companies, because without your customers using the product, expanding the use of the product, or buying add-ons, it's really tough for these cloud-based companies to grow. Typically, you can't sell your way out of this. So in other words, it's really hard to sell enough new business if you have too many of your existing customers leaving you. The math just doesn't work out.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna before we move on, I want to ask you one more question. And I actually saw this posted, I think, on LinkedIn a few weeks ago, and I was like, I'm going to save this for the webinar since when we have you on here. We see a lot of folks asking these days, are some of the methodologies that have been around for a long time, spin selling, question-based selling, are a lot of those, do you still see a lot of those being relevant, or are you starting to see folks, and are you guys teaching, something completely different at the Bridge Group and teaching, SaaS companies kind of a different perspective these days?
Yeah, that is an interesting question. I mean, so far we still are seeing companies using a lot of those traditional methodologies like you mentioned, like spin and Sandler and target account selling and question-based selling. But I think that there's a little bit of extra that we're adding on. At the Bridge Group, what we really focus on is ensuring that you understand your business buyers, particularly their pain and their challenges, or the business opportunity that you add, as value. And so you need to be talking in terms relevant to your buyer, not you as the vendor. And I think that's where we see sort of the biggest spin, is that we're used to talking about us as the vendor, not what is really important to our particular and each unique buyer that we're talking to. And so today, people, you're seen as providing value and thought leadership. That's what's working, and that's what customers want today. They want you to be more of a trusted advisor, not a salesperson and not somebody who's real schooled in your product. But again, what can you add to their unique needs and world that is going to give them a new insight or a new way of thinking about things that they should be looking at that maybe they haven't considered before. And so that's where we see more methodologies following those customer buying tracks and focus on the customer.
Yeah, and I think that goes around back also to being a challenger sales, the kind of the whole challenge sales methodology, and thinking outside the box. And it goes to knowledge transfer. One of the things we'll talk about a few slides from here is, knowledge transfer and getting the right information out to the right people at the right time. and how difficult, that is for companies to, listen, it's difficult to do that directly. Now imagine having to do that with partners, and how do you start doing those things with partners and getting the right information to them to get out to customers? So
exactly.
all great points there. One thing that I like to dive into a little bit is some, really big myths around channel programs. I've had a chance to read, I think it was the beginning of this year, a study that was done out there by another vendor that talked about top challenges that channel chiefs see these days. And it drove me nuts because, a lot of the, those top 10 challenges that they're talking about today are the top 10 challenges when I look back at reports from 10 years ago and kind of wondering, why are these things still challenges 10 years later? And why is the channel been one of those areas that had not seen much innovation in the space in terms of technology? We looked at 5,000 different, B2B SaaS apps created just in the MarTech space, when you look at some of the charts out there over the last 5-6 years, none in channel. So why is it that kind of the channel has been struggling and left behind? And I think a lot of it's because there's some heavy myths around it. There's some barriers to entry and heavy myths that I think have made people a little bit afraid. So what are some of those? I'm going to cover them here real fast. Number one, I think people for a long time have thought that partner programs have to be complex, they're expensive, they're hard to measure, and I think that's looking at it from a wrong perspective. These days, I think partner programs, and part of our goal even is to make partner programs available to anyone, no matter what size your business, no matter who you are. Help the SMB feel like a VB, feel like a very big business, and operate and function like a bigger business. So I think you can do that by making things simple and much more kind of elegant in terms of the technology and automation that you use. I think another piece, again, we've talked about this already, partner programs are only valuable for demand generation, bookings, and revenue. Think less about bookings, think more about business. Partner programs, sure, they're going to help you generate revenue. They can be great at driving referrals and driving new customers, but also think about how they help those customers get better results faster. And that is where partners can provide great results. I think we saw that, just in that Apple slide from a few minutes ago. Number three, you need a lot of partners in your program to be successful. I can't tell you how false that is. I think it's almost thinking about it a little bit like we think about account-based marketing and account-based sales and account-based everything these days. It's really zeroing in on the partners who you can build the best relationships with and get the most value out of. So rather than the old kind of 80-20 rules where, you have 20% of your partners bringing you 80% of the results that you get, why not have less partners bringing you just as many results? Focusing on the top 20 partners or even the top 10 to help you get started, you can really focus a lot on. This is kind of one of the biggest issues that we've seen out there for a long time. It's trust. So being prepared to have partners, you don't be secretive or overprotective of their data and their prospect information. I think these days that's just not true. We had Tiffany Bova of Salesforce speak at our conference a few months ago, and she was talking about P2P, which is partner to partner. Not just people to people, but partner to partner, having partners work together, having them be more cooperative in the business. So the things that drive great partnerships these days, I think it goes back to any relationship that you have, is trust and transparency and communication. The more you can do that, listen, if your partners aren't being your partners aren't being transparent, if they're not helping you close deals, if they're not being great for your customers, then are they really partners? I challenge you to ask them that question. And then last but not least is that partners need to be managed separately from your team. Need to have a separate technology stack. We've seen companies spend tons of money at building these separate stacks for their channel programs, and I think that kind of goes completely opposite from the way technology is being built these days. Managing those partners just like they're part of your team, integrating technology into your direct sales and marketing stack, leveraging your existing investments to help partners be successful. Again, you look at speed, cost, agility, you bring those things back into these myths. And what you're doing building a partner program, those all go back to having those partners and the people that are part of those organizations be directly aligned to your business. So I think those myths are kind of part of the reason that companies have kind of hesitated a little bit in the past building partner programs. But it's time that we need to look past those and kind of realize it doesn't have to be complex. It can be built quickly. It can be really effective. It doesn't have to be expensive. And how do we start, bringing that kind of, benefits that partner programs have into our businesses? So that's where we say, listen, it's not if you're going to build a partner program for a lot of companies. It starts to be when. When do we start doing this? How early are we in our company, and at what point do we need to start building this program? And we talk a lot about companies that are earlier and earlier these days. At Allbound here, as soon as we launched. Now, granted, for us it was kind of eat your own dog food or drink your own champagne. Let's start this early. We even started at $1 million of revenue, and we within a few months had a few $100,000 of pipeline generated by partners. So, I think sometimes it can be too early for some companies when you don't necessarily have product market fit yet. But I do also think that from a top-down perspective of a partner program being a strategic initiative of the organization, it has to at least be thought of early on in terms of how you're going to align that direct sales team with your partner team. And I'll bring this up as well, and we're going to bring Sally back in here to talk about this a little bit. You may have a channel program right now without even realizing it. Because, when you think about businesses these days, your business itself is really an ecosystem. You may already have a channel, and not only that, but the individuals within your organization, they kind of have their own channels with their own network. So where I want to bring Sally back in to talk about it for a minute is, I think it's really important in the realm of social selling, of how people are using their own networks to build relationships and get referrals. How does all this play back, and how do you think folks kind of use their networks and use this whole social selling aspect and using their networks to sell?
Yeah, Scott, the saying, it takes a village to raise children. Well, today it takes a village to sell. The research shows on average there are 6.7 people involved in every sale. So this is one of the reasons why LinkedIn is be considered a standard must-have sales tool, just like a CRM for the past, 5 years or so. You need the ability to personalize and humanize relationships. And so again, using all of these other ecosystems allows you to reference common connections, whether it's internally in your company or external connections to your company. And these relationships, help you get in the door, get a seat at the table, when a lot of other methods maybe haven't worked. And again, as we had talked about a little bit earlier, you need to be seen as that trusted advisor today. And so reps are creating their own branding. And they're doing that through LinkedIn posts, tweets, blogging. And this, again, builds that credibility and allows you to be seen as as that trusted advisor with your buyers. And so this big ecosystem, as you had talked about, we really already have multiple channels. We just don't necessarily maybe think of them in the sense of a channel. But you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
We're already there.
Well, yeah, and I think that's an important point. A lot of companies are already there, but now how do they get them organized and ready to go out there and actually be more of a strategic part of the business? I've seen a lot of folks talk about there being shadow channels, almost like they're shadow IT these days. I think that's more of just, having those kind of relationships and that social selling ability and having those partners that some of your individual reps may be working with as well. It's just good modern selling. It's just a good way of selling these days. Don't you kind of think the same thing?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We even see it sort of at our level where we have a lot of reps from, let's say, sales tools vendors, being that, we consult to inside sales and sales development tools. The sales vendors, are coming to us and saying, hey, let's do a partnership, or, who should we be talking to, or can you, how do, we want to make sure that you know about what we're providing so that you can be out there talking to your customers about what kind of tools or category of tools they should be looking at and investing in. So, as you had mentioned, the reps are doing a lot of this on their own without maybe even a formalized system in place.
Yeah, and listen, guys, if you want a perfect example of that, look at the webinar you're sitting on right now. That, with Sales Hacker, the Bridge Group with Trish, and then, Allbound, and, who connected all of us at the very beginning was a guy named Richard Harris, who's very involved in this sales methodology and selling as well. those partnerships and how we're all helping each other out. It's happening all the time, oftentimes without us even noticing it. So I challenge you guys to look at how you now go and kind of structure those relationships and get more value out of them and deliver more value to the partners that you have also.
Yep.
So, okay, so now let's dive into a little bit of kind of some of the meat here. How do you build what we call, a full customer lifecycle partner program that accelerates recurring revenue and avoid, of course, those pitfalls along the way? And when I say full customer lifecycle partner program, again, I'm not just talking about the traditional kind of old school partner programs where you have a portal and it's all about how the pre-sales and training and all that. It's about, having a partner program that focuses on the entire life cycle of the customer, how you deliver value from start to finish, and how you, utilize technology to do that. So one of the first things we'll dive and talk to in here is listen, you just got to think about this partner program in terms of what it is and what you're essentially building, because a lot of times people will use partners or go and build partnerships to get into other territories and geographies, to go wider horizontally in terms of their product and their reach, and to go deeper vertically into specific markets. So, if you're building or selling a product, a security tool that you want to get into, you think can provide a lot of benefits to the healthcare market, you're going to probably, you can go and hire a bunch of reps to go after the healthcare market, do a ton of marketing and spend a ton of money, or you can go find some great partners who already have some of those relationships with some of the big healthcare providers that are out there and see how you can provide them with the benefit while they're delivering them back to you. So how do you build out this sales team who essentially, again, is volunteers and get them engaged with you and with your technology or with what you are selling? So one of the first thing I'll tell you, and I kind of went back to this before, is number one, your partners cannot be left on an island to fight for survival. Again, this goes to the top down, and we'll get more into leadership here in a second, but they've got to be integrated with your business. And so you've got to think of the partners that you work with as being people. And we say all the time, we even handed out pins at Dreamforce last year and T-shirts and all that. They said partners are people too. A lot of times companies refer to their partners as just the business name. Hey, we've got Insight as a reseller, or, company XYZ is a reseller. You've got to go a level deeper than that. You've got to think of the people that are engaged in that business just like you do in your own company. You think about when you're recruiting folks to hire within your organization and when you're building your culture, how those people fit into your business and how you're helping them, and how you're getting them engaged with your company. And you've got to think about doing the same thing with those partners. You want to be engaged with your organization as well. And they want to be engaged. So don't make that mistake too. They want to be engaged with what your business is doing and the difference that you're trying to make. That's why they want to go to work with you. So where does all that start? And, it starts with recruitment. It starts with finding the right partners that you want to work with and that are going to work with you as well. So, one of the things we like telling companies to start out with is building partner personas just as you would build buyer personas. And, build out those people. We do this, give a plug to HubSpot because we're big HubSpot users. We build buyer personas directly in HubSpot, and we start putting together some partner personas on there as well, so that we know exactly who we want to target, who can be a great partner for us, and who we will be able to offer complementary services solutions to, who will benefit from the relationship in both directions. So listen, if both benefit, if you benefit as well as your partners, then that relationship is going to be more natural, it's going to be more sticky, you're both going to get results, there's going to be a lot more engagement on both sides. And then, again, like I mentioned a second ago, vertical topical service expertise. Can they help you get into new vertical markets? Can they help you cover topics and dive deeper into thought leadership that you can't do on your own? Can they provide services that back up your solution? I'll talk about HubSpot again real fast. HubSpot and Pete Caputo, who ran their partnership over there. If you Google those names real fast, you'll find an article about this, about how he helped build a $100 million channel for HubSpot with agencies and services partners. The value that HubSpot was able to provide to them versus, aligned perfectly to the value that these agencies are able to bring back to the inbound methodology. So it all starts with recruitment. Sal, I'm going to bring you back in for a second, talk about the buyer personas to help us, how we focus on those things and to help us find, quality prospects more than just quantity, and I think that goes back to partners too. But how important do you see it for companies working, you're working with today in terms of building these personas, and how are you helping companies, really find the right prospects? And I think that has to do with, again, the kind of some of the stuff around the account-based method and looking again more at looking at quality versus quantity.
Wow, I'm so happy you brought this up, Scott. This is like one of our favorite topics. And, understanding your buyer personas so that you really add that quality piece is one of the biggest bang for your bucks you can get in a company, whether it's, in a direct relationship or in a partner side of things. I mean, we've worked with both where companies on the partner side, they just went, as you were talking about, for the quantity, and they have, hundreds, maybe even thousands of partners, of which probably 90%, or maybe it's the old 80-20 rule, 80% have never done anything with them, and it's because they're not the right people, right? They're not the right companies, not the right people that they've engaged with. The same thing happens on the direct side, is that if you don't have and understand who your buyers are and the ideal customer profile, you get a lot of crud.
Yeah.
In your pipeline, in your sales, those are the ones that end up not sticking, right? And that's where you get a lot of the churn and burn. We build a lot of playbooks for companies, and at the core of the playbooks is really all around, starting with who is your ideal customer profile, how do you describe that company, and then closely followed by what are the ideal buyer personas within that company. And you need to understand for each buyer persona what those key needs and challenges are for that buyer. Or maybe it's not a pain or a need or a challenge that you solve for that buyer. Maybe it's a business opportunity, a growth strategy or something that you can provide. But you need to understand what that is. And then what you do from understanding this, you take your value propositions, map them to your buyer needs, and this allows you to reframe the whole conversation with your buyer. And now you can talk in terms that the buyer really wants to talk about, because they don't want to have a conversation with you as a vendor about your product features and speeds, right? They want to talk about themselves. So you need to really understand, again, what it is that they're doing and what their needs are to have that proper conversation where you can talk about them, not about yourself. And this is where, again, we see amazing results, actually almost instantaneous on the building the pipeline side, from getting the right quality people with deals that are going to actually close in a decent time frame and that they're going to stick around. You're not going to have the churn and burn when you follow, building your buyer personas and talking in terms that are relevant to the buyer.
Yeah, and I think, just hearing you talk about this, I think you can also think about it back to how you do your own recruiting and hiring in your organization with your direct sales team. Of course, a lot of companies these days, they're told, and I believe also you've always got to be recruiting. You've always got to be building folks out, but, you're doing that very meticulously when you're hiring for your business. And, you're taking the time and effort to onboard and train and make these sales reps that you've got in your organization effective, so that you don't have to hire tons and tons. You're trying to keep customer acquisition costs down. I think the same thing can be said when you're out there recruiting partners. You have a certain persona that you want to hire for your business internally. Well, you've got to have a certain persona that you want to recruit in terms of partners as well. So those are really important facts. And we talk a lot about there being 4 really keys to success, and I talked about alignment a second ago. You're going to see us mentioning that a few more times. When we look at these kind of 4 keys as being, they're 4 C's. Let's think about it that way: content, collaboration, customer success, and culture. If you don't have these 4 things aligned with your organization and your partner organization, and they're tied back together, then you're going to struggle effectively building a partner program that does what we're talking about here, growing recurring revenue. So, the number one problem that we see out there, and that we've heard from, from analysts, from Forrester and Gartner and some of the other ones out there, is knowledge transfer. When you talk to companies, people who are partners with organizations, they say access to the right content at the right time to help them move deals, whether it be, individual piece of content or like Trish was talking, or I'm sorry, like Sally was talking about a second ago, playbooks. I think that's really, really important. There was an article written just last Thursday or Friday, by the folks at Gainsight and Cisco, and they talked about alignment. Chris Dole, VP of Customer Success at Cisco Cloud Security, said when it comes to your partner ecosystem, it's about alignment, and that alignment is about knowledge transfer. So, that's about the buyer's journey and those personas. That's about content. That's about training, resources, sales tools, information about your competitors, information about other partners, technology partners you may be working with who they have access to, your support and customer success team, and the rest of your team. So getting this information, the guy sitting, next to you at the cube or at the desk next to you may have access to. He or she may be able to turn their desk around and talk to the marketing team or the engineering team. Your partners who are geographically dispersed don't have that access, so how do you get that information to them? And how do you do that in a way where you're not just dumping it onto a portal so that they'll have to find? How do you make it intelligent? How do you make it get to them at the right point at the right time and to get on the right device? So I think those things are really important. Sally, I called you Trish again a second ago because Sally works with Trish Bertuzzi, who if you're on social media, you've heard of Trish Bertuzzi. So let's talk about sales enablement for a second. You hear about these days prospects and customers. Everyone says, they own the sales cycle now. So, what are companies doing more so these days to make sure those reps are you said it before, prepared to be helpers, prepared to be thought leaders as much as just sellers?
Yeah, boy, this is over, again, the last 4 or 5 years, this has emerged as such a hot area, and a big area where we see sales enablement really getting a seat at the table for the executive committee and becoming a critical piece of the glue between sales and marketing as well, to provide this knowledge transfer, because not only do you need it in the partner ecosystem, but you need it with your direct sales team. And we always like to say that whatever you are providing to your direct sales team, you also need to be able to provide to your partner ecosystem. You need to set everyone up for success. And I think that's where we're making great strides, but we have a lot of room for improvement. According to Forrester's study, only 20% of sales reps bring value to their buyers.
Wow.
In today's, it's kind of scary. In today's world, with social media, everyone is claiming they're the best, they're the largest, they're the number one, they're the coolest, the new bright shiny object, whatever it is. And we are really inundated with content. And I think there's a lot of good about it, but it also creates a lot of confusion with the buyers. And how do they determine what's real, what's made up? I just saw 3 companies in the same space claim that they're the best in this area, and they have the largest amount of customers or whatever. So, how do they know, again, what's real and what's made up marketing speak, if you will? And it really comes down to that it's through the interactions with the sales reps or your partners that they show they understand the buyer. They understand, again, the needs and challenges like what we were just talking about before. And they can offer that thoughtful information to help and become that trusted advisor. So, again, this is where you can't leave it up to your sales reps or the partner channel to figure out what is that information that they can offer. You really need sales enablement and marketing to take center stage in providing that information to the teams. So the training needs to become not just product training, but more importantly, training around the buyer again, their needs, their challenges, the value that they bring, and not the focus on the features and functionality of your product. So we need that total change in mindset. And again, it starts with, as you said, the knowledge transfer, and again, sales enablement really need to lead the charge on this within companies. Insights that are important to the buyer, such as use cases, results, how can you help them think about you in relationship to maybe your competitors without, downgrading your competitors.
Right.
So, all these, and geez, I mean, it is overwhelming. When you go into customers, especially the larger the company, I think the bigger the problem they have, because they've accumulated so much of this information over the years, and it's scattered all over the place, and you don't know what the latest update is. So
Yeah.
it is a real challenge that technology can help solve, to definitely give it to the reps at the right time, make sure it's the most current, the most up-to-date, and the most relevant, again, based on buyer personas.
Yeah, those are all amazing points. I'm going to bring one more thing up to that as well, and I think you hit the nail on the head when it's talking about listen, we're all innovators on this call. I'm guessing that everybody on here on this call right now is an innovator. They're creating something. They're trying to disrupt and change a market in some ways. I don't care if you're a brand new company or a company that's been around for 20, 30, 50 years. You're still doing innovation. You're trying to change things and let companies see how you're doing it. And it's not, I'll give you an example. When we started Allbound, I knew right away when we talked to the company, listen, we are not here to sell a product. We are here to sell a way of doing things. And you really got to think about how you create the content, the resources, the messaging to get that out to the folks who are, you're trying to impact, who you want to hear that message. One of the first things we did, and it was, surprising to a lot of people, and I'm not going to say first thing, but, one of the most important things we did early on was we focused just as much on content and inbound marketing as we did on hiring an outbound sales team. And then 18 months into the company, as we were growing this, we said we really need to plant our flag. We held a conference. I'm not telling everybody out there to go hold a conference, but so much around content and around the thought leadership you provide. The conference had nothing to do with Allbound. A lot of the content we create has nothing to do with Allbound or our product. It is about the way we think and the way you were trying to make a difference in this specific sector. And that's what we've found a lot of folks in our industry really appreciate. And the more you can help your partners understand that, I think that's a cultural thing, but also execution thing that you really need to take advantage of. So
Exactly.
I'm going to dive through a couple more of these kind of somewhat quickly because, excuse me, we're running a little short on time here. I guess we tend to talk a lot here, but I'll bring this other thing up real fast. God, I hate the word portal, and I hate the word PRM even more. I think, again, a lot of companies think, oh, I need a partner portal, and I'm going to challenge you to think about it differently. You don't need a partner portal. You need software. You need technology. We don't think of Salesforce or our CRM as being our sales portal. We don't think of our market automation tool, whether it be HubSpot or Marketo or Acton or Eloqua. We don't think of that being our marketing portal. It's our software. We've got to stop thinking about portals and PRM platforms. Partner relationship is what PRM stands for. We don't, those are dumping grounds. Those are things where people have to go get things. You've got to think about it as being more software-driven intelligent tools out there. Because what those really do is they help you focus on not just being, a company that does, focus on management and control, but focusing on enabling and empowering. And I think, we hear that so much internally with our companies. We don't hear it enough in terms of partners. Again, too many companies are focused on controlling everything their partners do, and that leads to that lack of trust and visibility. When we are enabling them, it's more about modern, transparent, simple, technology and leadership. So, Sally, real fast here, I wanted to bring this up because, listen, I know the thing I'm sick and tired of is, aside from portals and PRM platforms, is all the talk there's been over years about millennials, now Gen Z, businesses focus on hiring great people and empower them with tools and resources. I think it's so important. So what are some of the best practices you're seeing out there with how companies are empowering versus just managing those folks they're bringing on board?
Yeah, so really quickly too, I want to remind people we do have a few minutes that hopefully we'll have at the end to answer any questions, so don't forget to submit your questions online. But yeah, we see a lot of companies struggle with this, Scott. Companies believe because they hire smart people, they can figure it out on their own. And I have to tell you, smart people don't pick up all about your own company's unique value proposition, what the buyer needs are, the insights that you want to share to your buyer to become that trusted advisor through osmosis. Even though we're all hiring smart people, I mean, really, have you ever heard a company say they're looking for the not-so-smart sales reps?
Right.
I mean, the companies that are really succeeding, like Salesforce.com, Bill.com, Concur, Coupa, they have amazing training programs, content, and enablement for their sales team as well as for their partner team. They don't leave it up to chance. So some of the things, again, when we look at like new hire training, that we see is that it's not just a one-time event that, is a 1 or 2 week training program that is all about the vendor and your product, but it's evolved to include your product, but there's a lot more around and conversations around the buyer, their journey, their needs, their wants, why do they need you? And it continues after the initial training. Again, so that there's ongoing, again, it's not just that one-time event, as I said earlier. And easy access to the centralized content is a must-have. And as we just talked about, it's all related to helping empower and enable today's world.
Yeah, I'm going to bring up one quick example before we move on here. I reached out to a guy named Kyle Porter a few weeks ago. He's the CEO of SalesLoft, I'm sure some of you guys have heard of. And I said, hey, man, you built a great culture over there. I see some of the things you guys are doing. They're getting tons of customers. They have their conference. They raise more money. But one thing I was curious about is how he's maintaining that culture as they grow fast in the organization. And he was telling me about every 2 weeks they have a Tuesday meeting where they bring in the entire company and talk to them about product, about culture, about everything going on within the organization. It's constant learning and training and enabling about with their entire team. And I think, A, that's critical for companies to think about doing, and B, if you're doing those things, there's no reason that you shouldn't involve your partners in those meetings as well, exactly. In terms of, getting them engaged with your business and having them aligned with who you are. So I think those things are really important to think about. A couple more things here. Listen, customer success, we talk about this so much these days, and I'm sure a lot of you have heard of Gainsight and their CEO, Nick Mehta. I love this quote that he said a few weeks ago. Don't just make customers happy, make them successful. Happy is kind of an afterthought these days. If a company's buying your software, they should be happy, period. But how do you make them successful? And, went back a slide. Again, this goes back to the fact that, companies or partners can help accelerate sales. They can help you build brand recognition, generate demand. They can help sales efficiency. But, the entire fabric of the vendor-partner relationship is changing. Again, I'm going to point you guys to an article I read just this week about, with Gainsight and Cisco, where they talk about, this quote is awesome. We're observing the unfolding of a world where vendors and partners have a shared responsibility for positive customer outcomes. As Alvin Figgins is the Chief Customer Officer at Gainsight, I could not agree more. Because, when you think about customer expectations, when you think about customer adoption, when you think about customer growth and renewals, and how you're growing your ARR, MRR, that recurring revenue every month or every year, how are you and your partners doing that? How are you sharing that responsibility to help get great outcomes, not just happy customers? So, touching real fast on culture, and I kind of talked about this a minute ago with the SalesLoft example, and I think we've hit on it a bunch of times throughout this session. But listen, I think this is an important part of just the culture of your business and having this from the very beginning and knowing this whether you're launching a company or just starting to build a partner program. And we kind of saw it in what Benioff said in that quote early on in this presentation. If you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. There's nothing more true in terms of building a business, whether it's direct or you're bringing on channel partners. And, that goes back to another fact where, these days successful partnering is not just about building a channel program and hiring a channel manager. It is the result of great leadership within your organization. So, a lot of those things have to do with building a modern and dynamic, culture-driven, customer-first business and having those types of thinkers within your organization. And those are some of the most important factors here, in making it top-down. So, Sally, you just want to, chime in here real fast about, what are you seeing leaders do these days and to better help their teams, in terms of the culture, support, and resources that they need? What are some of today's leaders doing that are really effective?
Yeah, I think, so think about this message that is being sent when the company doesn't allow their customers an option to access support via phone. You can only talk to them via chat or email. I mean, I think that is one of the biggest challenges that we see when people are talking about customer first, but they limit you access to getting help to be successful as a customer. And so I think that, the leaders that are being successful are the ones that actually walk the talk about customers being first. And they find a way, no matter what their average deal size is, but to give their customers options that the customers want. So, for instance, I have a little payroll company that I utilize. And for me, I always find it's much quicker and shorter time for me to just hop on a quick phone call rather than to do a chat. Definitely better than sending an email, which, you may not get a response for 24 hours. And so when I can just pick up the phone, I get my answer in, 2 minutes versus waiting a day. That's what I want to do. And when my company that I'm utilizing lets me do that, I am a very satisfied customer, and it really impacts my capabilities. So, again, I think you've got to look through all parts of your business as a leader and make sure that when you say you're putting customers first, your policies, your procedures, the way you're interacting with your customers actually reflect that.
Yeah, and I think, it goes, when you're relaying that back to partners, two things. Number one, this goes back to remembering your partners are people too. Just like we said a few minutes ago, partners are people. And so, listen, yeah, you're going to have some kind of technology to support them, but, it's just like your direct organization. You've got CRM and market automation systems, but, one of the most valuable things you have within your company are the people and the brains within there. Same thing goes to giving your partners access to those same things. The second thing I'll mention is that, your partners are often the ones who are going to be face-to-face with these customers, sometimes more often than you are. So how can you empower them to take advantage of that relationships, and how can you use those relationships as well? So we talked about this, simple, digital, integrated. Your program has got to have those three characteristics. If you want to look at a playbook for accelerating recurring revenue, we talked about this before, profiling partners, defining the ROI that you're going to deliver to them through recruiting the right partners and be able to have that symbiotic relationship. Trust and transparency, sharing customer insights, enabling them, defining their role versus your role within the sales cycle and with customer success, and then finding a way to measure that effectiveness through certain scoring, through dashboards and KPIs. You put that playbook together and you're going to do all right. I promise you that. So again, it goes back. These are the kind of final slides we'll do, and then we'll take some Q&A. I ask these days, again, I said it's not if, it's when. And really the question is why. Why in the subscription economy doesn't every company have a partner program? The impact, I think, as we just kind of talked about, it can be indisputable if it's executed correctly. So last thing I'll leave you with here, I love this quote from Helen Keller. This is actually something, we had in our wedding vows when I got married, 6 years ago. Alone we can do so little, together we can do so much. Nothing is more true than that. So we'll leave you with that. Some additional resources here that we have on the Allbound website, including our blog with awesome guests. Our podcast with awesome guests. Some great resources to help you put these kinds of programs together. A scoring system where you can, go in there and do a health check on your channel performance. But last but not least, I just want to be able to see if we can take some questions, if any questions have come in, or you have our contact information there in case you want to ask any questions on social media, or please feel free to send an email directly to either of us.
So Scott, we do have a lot of questions that are coming in, and a lot of them seem to be centralized around what are the KPIs, how do I know, how do I measure if my partner program is on track and doing well?
So a couple of things here. I'll give you some examples of what some of our customers are doing and some of the things that we talk about. Number one is kind of an analytic that we've kind of started using a lot within our partner, within our customers is one called channel velocity rate. I think we've all read about lead velocity rate. How do you measure channel velocity rate? So very much some of the same analytics, but you're looking at how long deals have been in the pipeline versus how many deals are in the pipeline and how fast they're closing and how engaged your partners are. There's actually a formula that, gosh, believe it or not, we're probably going to have a blog article on this within the next couple days that gives the formula on exactly how to measure it. So we'll send that out and make sure folks have access to it. But channel velocity rate is one of them. If you want some background, look at lead velocity rate. Another one is engagement. How are partners engaging with the content and resources and tools that they have? Are they registering deals? What percentage of them are registering deals? How big are those deals? How fast are those deals moving through the pipeline? Channel velocity rate kind of gives a kind of high-level overview of those statistics, so you can actually start building trends. But you can also look at how often are your partners engaging with your content, the white papers, the tools, the resources, the training, everything that you're providing to them. How much are they engaged? Because the biggest things you want to do is really have partners engaged with your program. So if you can measure engagement, if you can measure, the velocity rate, then if you can go and measure things like managed MRR or managed ARR, what's the churn rate amongst those partners and the customers that they're managing? Are they growing the MRR that they're in charge of? Are they increasing the size of the deals or growing wallet share with those customers? So, a lot of the analytics that you can look at within your own organization can be replicated and measured for partners if you have the right tools and data that you're pulling from those things. And you can start showing a lot of those dashboards directly within your CRM, like Salesforce and other tools that you're using. Not to plug Allbound, but those are some of the things that we help companies focus on and do.
That's awesome. Yeah, that was great help. We really appreciate it, Scott. Thanks for sharing your insights into the importance of the channel. And we're running out of time here, so we'll wrap it up. But for those of you we didn't get to your questions, we apologize. But feel free to reach out to Scott and or myself and ask them directly. Happy to take any and all questions and comments. And again, thanks to everyone for listening. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Apologies for going a little long, but like Sally said, please do send over those questions. We're glad to answer them. So thank you, Sally, for hosting this, and thank you to Sales Hacker. We appreciate you all being here today.
Absolutely.